let's go ahead and get ready for the big presentation here. And before we get started, folks, let's please all make sure to mute our microphones. We should hopefully have a little bit of time at the end for a little Q&A. As you know, one of our main focuses here at Mask Off MN is on education, educating the public that there is no emergency, for example. But we also need to keep on educating ourselves. Last month, we had our June speaker series at Colby Jacks, and we had amazing discussions with Twyla Braze from Citizens Council for Health Freedom. We had Ken from Minnesota Governor, Dr. Scott Jensen, and Nova Lee, of course. We had Dr. Bob from New Kingdom Healthcare, and of course, Representative Eric Mortensen. If you haven't watched those replays, you definitely make sure to do so. Tonight is a first, as we get to actually have a special guest speaker on one of our virtual meetings. And I'm super excited because our special guest speaker tonight is someone I've been following for over 2 decades. He's an important pioneer of the movement to commercialize the internet. He's responsible for many of the everyday techniques people use to promote themselves and their causes on the internet. Also, he's one of the earliest and most incisive critics of what he calls the COVID con and the lockdowns. He's the founder of Brass Check TV, and the last bastions of independent journalism in America. Last year, Brass Check released a hard-hitting documentary titled AIDS, Fauci's First Fraud. This is the key to unlocking the COVID con. I just watched this, folks, over the weekend. If you haven't seen this, you need to. We linked to it in the email invite that you received today. The correlations to what is happening today versus back then is absolutely uncanny. So please, everyone, let's give a warm virtual welcome to Mr. Ken McCarthy.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for inviting me and for your patience with me and everybody that was willing to do Dropbox. I just can't load another communication software program on my computer, so I really appreciate everybody being willing to indulge me. As David pointed out, I'm a marketer from way back. I'm also a pretty serious scholar of the history of propaganda. I'm a pretty good researcher. Some of you may know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is writing a book on Fauci, which should be coming out soon, and I have been providing him with lots of juicy information. I'm really glad to see so many people, 44 people. This is a great thing. Yes, it takes money. Everyone threw in a buck, it helps, and if you can do more, do more. I do recommend that. I've also been involved in a lot of, social movements like this. A big cement company wanted to put the second largest coal-fired cement plant in North America right up the street from me practically. That was a 7-year battle. They had all the money in the world. We had none. And 7 years later, we prevailed. There was a massive election fraud in San Francisco once over a stadium bond. They wanted to give $250 million to some nefarious NFL football team owners. And the thing lost, but amazingly, the last set of ballot boxes, which disappeared for 4 hours, arrived, and they were 90-10 for the stadium, and it won by 0.1%. We stopped. That was impossible to stop. We stopped it. The last thing I want to talk about before I get into tonight's information is so-called Hurricane Katrina. New Orleans was not destroyed by a hurricane. It was destroyed by an engineering failure. The hurricane missed New Orleans largely. It did hit Mississippi hard. It did not hit New Orleans, and all those people died, and all those hundreds of millions and millions of dollars of damage was caused by engineering failure, which the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers tried to cover up, and they failed. I was instrumental in prevailing there. There's a whole book about it called Words Whispered in Water, which you can get and read. So what you're doing can absolutely work. And I'm telling you, it always starts small, and it always starts with next to zero resources. You'd be amazed. I guess I can disclose now because the book came out. Levees.org was really basically one person and me and whoever else she could rope into helping her. And with that, we defeated the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and force the New York Times and CNN and NBC to actually tell the truth. So these things can happen. They take a tremendous amount of work. There was nothing casual or accidental about any of it, but it works. It does work. I love that you guys are having a picnic. Is that so? That was one of our best organizing tools in stopping the cement plant. We had a picnic every year, and amen. Give people reason to come together and enjoy each other's company. It's a great thing. So let me give some general advice before I get into maybe some things I can talk about things that maybe you don't know about. But don't feel that it's your job to persuade everybody in the universe to suddenly become sane on this issue. You know, you have to pick your battles. So what I would do is look for people that are receptive to hear, to listen. You know, there are people that are going to, you know, their arms folded and they're done, and there's literally nothing you can say to change their minds. This has gone. I wonder, David, do you know? You could just nod. Do you know the work of Ben Settle?
No, I do not.
Oh, Ben Settle's a really good copywriter, and he started out as a student of mine, and now he's a superstar. And his most recent issue talks about the fact that this whole thing has nothing to do with rationality or science or logic or intelligence at all. It has jumped into the realm of religion. You know, the people that believe this insanity and believe it whole hog believe it with a religious conviction, and nothing you say is going to change those people's minds. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean we give up. It just means we pick our battles and we direct our energy intelligently. So what we're looking for are people who know something's wrong and just need ammunition. That's where to spend your hard-earned life energy. Don't try to convert the religious zealots. And these people are zealots. They're out of their minds. And I don't really know what's going to put them back in their minds. That's not our business. Our business is to build our group as big and as influential as it can possibly be. Okay, so I hope that's a helpful thing. Steady communication, I know David knows this, is the key. Just keep pumping it out, keep pumping it out, keep pumping it out. You know, that's what we got to do. All right, so where to begin? I have been saying that the U.S. is a medical dictatorship for many years, and that was long before this COVID con came along. It's obscene how the pharmaceutical industry and the medical device industry has taken over medicine and medical practice and the way people are treated in this country and the way medical science proceeds. It's an obscenity, and you know, they won a long time ago, really, and they've just been pushing it every year. Before the COVID con, what did we have? We had a minor measles outbreak, a couple of hundred kids, and suddenly every state in the union had to take away the vaccination exemptions for children. New York State, where I live, you cannot send a child to school if they don't have vaccination. So I don't know, what is that? How's that in Minnesota? What's up there?
They're working on taking away maybe someone can type it in the chat box and correct me on this, but I believe they're working on taking away the religious exemption and the medical exemption. Does anyone in the chat box want to just let me know what the current status of that is? But yeah, it's not as bad as out there, I don't think, but it's heading that direction.
Okay. Okay, so that's one of their aims. And you know why? I mean, you guys. I don't know how much you already know. So if David can move me along if I'm talking about stuff that you already know. I'm muting people as I speak here. Yeah. I don't know who that person is. I'm really trying to get them. I don't even see them. But in any event, okay, where was I? Sorry about that. So I don't know. I mean, how many people know that Fauci is maybe show hands or thumbs? How many people know that Fauci is the single highest paid civil servant in the entire federal government? Everybody knows that. Okay. I was one of the first people to point that out in March of 2020. How many people know that his wife is the head of bioethics for NIH? Thumbs on that? David knows that. Again,
I learned that from your video, Ken, just a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. So I announced that, I think, in April of 2020, and people still aren't picking up on that. How many people know that basically all the research money for health issues in this country flows out of the NIH? How many people are aware of that? Okay. Yeah, Victoria knows. Folks, that's how it works. That's why Fauci has such insane amounts of control. If you want a grant to study disease, you're probably going to get it from NIH. So if you're an individual person, your career depends on that, okay? But it's even worse than that. If you're a university, if you're a college, if you're a research hospital, your pipeline depends on keeping Tony Fauci happy. That's why this guy has such an insane amount of power. The other reason he has and I wish I could mute this guy. Do you hear that?
I think it's Katie. Yeah, I see Katie, but I don't have the controls to mute.
I don't see her. I see.
I had to search her name, Kati, and it came up in the search.
Ah.
But, so Katie, if you can hear.
No, she's muted. So wait. Okay. I think she handled it. Guys, I'm easily distracted, so please don't make it any harder for me. Okay. Fauci. That's about all you need to know about Fauci. The other part of this triumvirate, and I think everybody knows this name, is Bill Gates. But how many people know that in the last 10 years alone, Bill Gates has given out over $100 million in grants to news media outlets? That's everybody. That's National Public Radio. That's the Los Angeles Times. That's the BBC. That's El País, which is the big newspaper in Spain. That's Le Monde, the big newspaper in France. To the Guardian. $100 million, no strings. Well, often the strings are for health reporting. Okay, and so that's a big problem. Maybe you're aware of this. If you watch the evening news, it's all pharma ads now, right? And you know, David's in advertising. I'm in advertising. I think it through. If somebody's getting 50% of their revenue or more, and it's steady from one source, they're going to dance to that tune, period. And that's why we see Anderson Cooper Vanderbilt and people like that going on and on about how great pharma is. So we've got that fellow. All right. Some people wonder how this got coordinated so well. Part of it has to do with AIDS money. That's why I made the film AIDS. HIV equals AIDS, Fauci's first fraud. So literally 40 years ago, I think it's the 40th anniversary of the kickoff of that fraud. They made a completely erroneous connection between a genetic artifact called HIV and a syndrome, not even a disease, called AIDS. And it started with this one virus was supposedly creating two completely different diseases. By the time they were finished, this one virus was supposedly responsible for 29 different diseases. It's sheer lunacy. Nobody who's serious about science or biomedicine, including the fellow who invented the PCR test, Kary Mullis, Nobel Prize winner, nobody bought it. However, the money was huge. And the money has gone everywhere. Imagine this. You cannot be the head of public health of a city, state, or county, or the United States unless you buy the HIV equals AIDS virus myth. You're unemployable. You're probably not going to get tenure at a medical school, okay? You're surely not going to get any research money for anything.
What's
okay?
that?
They retire and then they get slammed.
So,
Yeah.
So you see how that works. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is what we're up against. So if you're wondering how all this happened, all this infrastructure has been carefully built over the last 40 years. It's like mushrooms, right? Mushrooms, they have their mycelium underneath the ground and they're kind of growing around, and then it rains and then they pop out. Well, that mycelium has been there for a long time. And that's what we're seeing now. I compare this to us being Vietnamese peasants. You know, we're growing rice and we have our oxen and we're just trying to take care of our families. The next thing you know, there's B-52s in the air dropping bombs on us. We don't know what a B-52 is. We don't know what a bomb is. We don't know what an airport is. We don't know that there are factories in Des Moines, Iowa making these things. We don't know there are guys in the Pentagon. We're just sitting there getting rain bombs on. And that's kind of the way Americans have been throughout this COVID con. I was not, because I'm a student of propaganda. I know how these things are organized and how they're put together. There's another important player in this that you probably have never heard of, a guy named Peter Schwartz. That won't ring a bell. You've surely heard of the Rockefeller Foundation. 15 years ago, Peter Schwartz, who used to be an intelligence officer for Royal Dutch Shell, they have their own intelligence. They have their own little CIA within Shell Oil, and he worked for it. He doesn't try to hide it. He's proud of it. And one of their things is to go around and help destabilize countries that have oil so that they can get the oil cheap. That's how he made his living. So 15 years ago, he wrote a paper for the Rockefeller Foundation called Lockstep. And it was all about a pandemic that would suddenly sweep the world. And what would we do? Well, we'd have to close the borders. We'd have to close every business. All nations would have to act in concert. This was all written out 15 years ago. Now, where's Peter Schwartz now? Peter Schwartz is the chief futurist guru for Salesforce.com. And you may say, who cares? Well, the guy that owns Salesforce.com also owns Time Magazine. But wait, there's more. Salesforce, along with IBM, built the vaccine cloud so that listen, anybody that knows IT knows that no town, city, state, county can find with both hands. They can't find their way out of a paper bag. So they needed somebody to build a vast vaccine management system, targeting people, contacting them, sending messages, coordinating the sites, following up, and all that. That's what Salesforce.com did. And miraculously, this thing started going in March, right? By December, they had the suite completely built out, working on all 8 cylinders, no bugs, and all these counties, states, and towns could just pay a fee, plug in, and get a world-class mass vaccination system. Okay? Now, who's the best friend of, his name's Mark Benioff, that's the owner of Salesforce.com. Who's his personal guru? Have you ever heard of the World Economic Forum? What's the guy's name? Klaus, Schwab. Okay, if you look up Mark Benioff and Salesforce.com, you will see that he worships at this guy's feet. I'm not even exaggerating. Okay, so that's how this thing got lined up. You had Fauci controlling all the public health professionals and all the scientists. You had Gates paying buckets of money to every single news outlet. And then you had this Salesforce.com creating the software engine to handle this. I think everybody realizes this has been a vaccine marketing campaign since day one, right? Everybody knows that. I would trust you know that, right? There's no science here. There's no legitimacy. It's all to sell vaccines. So this is how this happens so fast, and these are the players, and this is how they all interact and work together. So we shouldn't be daunted, but it's very good to know, so that you know when those planes are flying over you, dropping bombs on you every day, it's like, oh, I get it. I get where they're flying from. I get who's loading the planes. Okay. I could go in so many different directions. Well, I do encourage people to watch the HIV equals AIDS fraud, Fauci's first fraud film, because they use the same playbook to sell COVID. Identical. This virus appears out of the blue. It's deadly. It spreads. There's asymptomatic spreaders. It's responsible for every disease known to man, right? You get a hangnail, it must be HIV. You stub your toe, it must be HIV. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed, it must be HIV. Then they created testing. Everybody had to get tested. I don't, if you're of a certain age, I couldn't get life insurance. I'm 61. I couldn't get life insurance way back when unless I got an HIV test. Yeah, my life insurance company would not give me life insurance. Why? I'm not a risk factor person. And then they weaponized an entire section of the community, and they made it into a moral crusade. You know, you got to help these people. You know, you don't scorn them. You know, they're victims. If you don't pour millions and billions of dollars into this, it means you hate a certain segment of society. And if you do support what we're doing, that means you love that segment of society. They just took that and made it 1,000 times bigger. And that's not to say that everybody, believe me, there are plenty of gay activists that are, in fact, that are well aware that the HIV thing is a scam. In fact, if you watch my film, the leaders, the true leaders of that. So this is not about a particular group of people, but they weaponized that society very, very strongly. And those people are actually active foot soldiers today in the same thing. So not only did they have you know, the hospitals and the researchers and the media and the Fortune 500 CEOs, they had a network of, frankly, ignorant hysterics who were ready to get emotional over fraud. And those are the people in your communities very largely that are still, the name of the video is Fauci's First Fraud. I had to put it on unlisted so that it would survive. So you have to have the exact link. I'm going to ask David to send everybody that link. But, the other part of the other similarity is they raced through a cure. And that cure conservatively killed at least 300,000 people, maybe 500,000, maybe more. And it's called AZT, and it was a drug so deadly that it had been banned for human use. And Fauci, working with the FDA, working with the hysterics, the professional hysterics, created such a political climate that it was authorized for emergency use. And not only did they give it to young male gay men, they also decided, well, we think black people get this virus a lot too, especially pregnant women. Black pregnant women, they seem to get HIV a lot. So a lot of this AZT was given to pregnant women. And then they decided, well, you know what? If the moms have it, the kids must have it. So they started giving AZT to newborn infants without even bothering to test them for HIV. So this sinister stuff, guys, has been going on for a long, long, long time. It's just that it finally reached every one of us. And so, you know, there's 47 of us on this call. That's fantastic. And we're going to stand our ground. We're going to be informed. We're going to find the people who are interested in this, who want to know the facts, and we're going to share the facts with them. And we're going to ignore the hysterics and the zealots and the ideologues and the nutcases, and just let them wear themselves out. We're looking for the people that are interested in learning the truth. And then there's a thing about, I'll tell you this, when the cement plant was proposed for where I live, it was a done deal. Every politician was for it. Every news media was for it. And people who were against it were afraid to put signs on their lawn because they thought their windows would be broken. Okay, that's where we started. So what will happen is, as you educate people and make this group bigger, people that are on the sidelines will start to get some courage, and they'll start to say, okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. It takes time. In fact, our group started with about 40 people. You know, we ended up with 4,000 paid members in a county of 40,000. Think about that. And David, I'm going to recommend that you ask for paid membership, $5 a month, $10 a month. You know, it helps. It just helps with the bills. Because there are bills, obviously. There's expense. I had a lawn sign made. You'll appreciate this. Unmask our kids now. That was the lawn sign. So I put up about 40 of them, and within a week they were all taken away. How do you like that? I've seen signs for, I'm trying to think of a polite word, politician. I'll just say politicians. I won't use an adjective. I've seen lawn signs for politicians on public land that haven't been touched in 8 months for their last campaign, right? How long ago was November? And their signs are still up. Nobody took them down. I put up a sign that said, unmask our kids now, and somebody took it upon themselves to take it down. So if I don't have an organization here. I'm kind of just focused on research. But if I had an organization, I would put those signs up, and I'd replace them every freaking day. Wear them out. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. And we are.
Good. That's beautiful. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Do you have a call to action on your signs, like a website?
Yeah, we do actually. So we just had a bunch of brand new signs that are being printed right now as we speak, and we're going to be getting them this week. But some of them are as simple as this, just the yard sign here. Big yard sign has the website on there. But yeah, some of them will say join us. Some of them, a lot of them will say unmask the children.
Very good.
You know, children wearing masks equals child abuse, things of that nature.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Is your and I don't know a whole lot about your group. Is it primarily about masks, or is it masks and vaccines, or?
It's against all of the nonsense, basically. So,
okay,
yeah,
good.
Not just masks, because technically here in Minnesota, our mask mandate is now complete, allegedly. But we're against all the nonsense. You know, I mean, like in the beginning of the meeting, I have a little intro slide where we talk about, you know, we're against the lockdowns of small businesses. You know, the distancing on the children, the stupid signs on the doors, the insulting stickers on the floors, all that nonsense we're against. So basically, overall, yes, health freedom. We're all for, and especially against experimental jabs being mandated on people.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody knows this is literally experimental. Right, this is not FDA approved. The safety trials are not done. They will not be done, I think, until 2023. By definition, this is an experimental medical procedure. The other thing that I think I've been talking about since March of 2020 is this is parallel to the Nazi regime. You know, this gets people into a tizzy. Oh, how dare you compare us to the Nazis? Well, let me tell you about what happened in Nazi Germany. They replaced the entire medical profession with Nazi Party members. That profession, of all the professions in Germany, engineers, accountants, you name it, whatever anybody did, the most highly represented profession of active party members. We're not talking about people forced into anything. We're talking about people that, you know, wore the armband and were into it. Doctors were the most represented of any profession in Germany. That's a fact. There's a whole book called The Nazi Doctors, you know, big, thick book written by a well-known fellow. There were some other things that went on. The falsification of death certificates. Now, you have a representative up there in Minnesota that you guys got a great guy in Minnesota. Are you able to work with him, support him, and?
So yeah, believe it or not, Ken, we actually had him. He's a candidate for governor. He's running against our country.
Oh wow! Maybe he'll be like Jesse Ventura.
But potentially, yeah, potentially. Although he's you know, kind of a controversial figure here in Minnesota. But yeah, I mean, we actually had Dr. Scott Jensen. He was one of our special guest speakers last month at one of our in-person meetings here. So he's running for Minnesota governor as a candidate. So yeah,
well, he's an epic hero, you know. But that is something. The falsification of death certificates is something that happened widespread in Germany by the Nazi doctors. It's in the book. And when they had the Nuremberg trials, that was what some of those guys were brought up on. They were some of them did other ghastly things, but some of them were on trial solely for falsifying death certificates. Because think about how serious that is. If you're trying to figure out what's going on with public health and somebody's just changing death certificates whenever they feel like it, that's a real big problem. So that also went on in Nazi Germany. And then, of course, the other big problem was subjecting people to medical experimentation against their will or without consent. So if you actually read someone just put something about Project Paperclip. It's hair curling how many Nazi scientists, including doctors, including people that were known war criminals, were brought into the United States after World War II. You know, you can look up Project Paperclip. All these things used to be wild conspiracy theories in the 1970s and the 1980s. And now there's, you know, a pretty mainstream. Her name is Jacobson, former New York Times reporter. She has a whole book on it. I mean, just hair curling. So when you read the Nuremberg Code, the first paragraph, how many people are familiar with the Nuremberg Code? One person at least, maybe some others. Okay, this is really important. So after World War II, we put these Nazi doctors on trial. Not all of them, some of them we hired. But the ones that were put on trial, and some of these guys were hung. I mean, this was hardcore. A code was written, the Nuremberg Code, and it has, I believe, 10 principles. But the very first principle is that it is essential to somebody said I did a podcast. Someone did a podcast on it. Great test if you did that. That's awesome. And I've done several podcasts on it. But anyway, it's very clear. No medical procedure experimental unless, or really any experimental procedure, but they specified experimental, unless the person has full disclosure. And no coercion, no force, no pressure, no this, no that. They give a long list and then they say other. So they basically covered every possible way you could push somebody into accepting. So, deceit is one of them. So clearly there's deceit here because they're telling people that this is an approved vaccine. You know, my position is, if you sit down with every person and say, okay, this is not approved by the FDA, it has emergency use authorization. The reason it's not FDA approved is the safety trials aren't done. The safety trials won't be finished until 2023. Do you want the vaccine? Do you want your child to have the vaccine? If they were to do that, then they'd be following the principles of the Nuremberg Code. But they're not doing that. I mean, now what was somebody from the White House came out and said, this is a vaccine, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, right? And so they're clearly going to be attacking us, people that say no to this. So that's something that's huge. And then we see signs, you can come in, but only if you're vaccinated. I don't know if you have those in Minnesota. We have that in New York.
We do a little bit here, Ken. I want to just mention really quick, Ken, too, our governor said that the vaccines are 100% safe and effective. That's what he said on TV.
I mean, these people are violating the Nuremberg Code. There's no, I know, and factchecker.org asked a bunch of medical ethicists. Now, what's a medical ethicist? Well, the medical ethicists are so new that my spell checker doesn't even recognize that as a word. So this is a new industry that's been cooked up in the last 20 years. They're everywhere. They're in every medical college. They're everywhere. And of course, Tony Fauci's wife is is de facto the head medical ethicist for the United States because she's head medical ethicist of NIH. How that's not news, I don't know. And every day I tell this to people and nobody listens. All right, so factchecker.org went to the medical ethicists, the ones that gave them the answer they wanted to hear, and their answer was, vaccines are proven and safe. Okay, that's not an answer. This is not whether vaccines are safe and proven. This is about this vaccine. And this vaccine, no ifs, ands, or buts, is not approved by the FDA. The FDA is one of the most corrupt organizations that has ever existed in humanity. And even they can't approve this thing. Even their standards are too high, at least at this point. We'll see. But it's not approved. Now, they were making some noise, remember a few months ago? Pfizer asks the FDA to approve the vaccine. That was headlines for like 3 days. And I bet a lot of people who weren't thinking carefully got the feeling that, oh, yeah, this is going to happen soon. Well, that was 3 months ago. This thing's nowhere near approved. So anyway, bottom line, you may not use deceit, force, compulsion, threats, anything to get somebody to undertake an experimental medical procedure. This, because it is not approved by the FDA, is absolutely still an experimental medical procedure. Period. They can spin all the baloney they want. They can cart out all the medical ethicists they want, the newly minted medical ethicists, and have them say, well, this doesn't apply to vaccines. A vaccine is a medical procedure. It's either approved or experimental. If it's experimental, it has rules, and those rules are being violated by your governor, by every idiot politician that pushes this thing, by every news media person, by everybody that asks you. I mean, I tell people when they ask me if I've been vaccinated, I go, I'm not answering that question. You shouldn't be asking it. Of course, it doesn't go over very well. Okay. So I think that's about all I can say. I mean, I could talk all day about this, obviously, but let's talk about practical things. I've given some ideas. I would suggest that you might consider having some lawn signs that are action-oriented, like unmask our kids now. And by
those specific signs, yeah.
Yeah, so that people see it and they grasp it. It's like, oh, in fact, one of the nice things was when I was putting up a sign, a lady rode by and honked her horn. Yeah, gave me 2 thumbs up. So, and by the way, those signs encourage the good people. And I don't want to make this good versus evil, but it's kind of boiling down to that. Good versus dumb. Yeah. So I would have signs that are just boom. I like the idea of focusing on masks and kids because I think even the most, hopefully, everybody gets that that's wrong. That is just absolutely wrong. I mean, everybody knows that kids do not get this thing. If they get it, they don't even know they have it. They were, by the way, how many people know that it has been revealed that there was a group within the German government that deliberately cooked this current German government, not the Nazi one, but the current one, that cooked up that children will kill grandma myth. That was cooked up consciously, deliberately, and promulgated. That's the thing that the average person doesn't know. All these things that you see in the news, they're not accidental. They're not just sort of, oh, that's just sort of what's in the air. No, some guys sat together in a room with a whiteboard and literally were looking for the most resonant things. And that's what we need to do. And I think focusing on the kids is the way to go. Protecting the kids, protect your nephews and nieces, protect your grandchildren. To me, that would be the hot button.
That is actually our new focus lately, just because they ended the mask mandate for most adults, so to speak here, but they are continuing it in many of the schools and on school buses because of the Biden national transportation whatever thing that he put.
Oh my God, you're kidding me.
So yeah, they do have to wear them on the school buses here. And just real quick, back to the coercion on the Nuremberg Code.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned, can't be coercion. So we have several colleges here in the Twin Cities that are at least saying that in order for the students to come back this fall, they have to be vaccinated with the vaccine. And so a lot of people are claiming that that's coercion. So what's your take on that?
Totally. What could be this? That's the very definite. You cannot continue your education unless you participate in this medical experiment. Are you kidding me? No, that's pure coercion. And here's the problem. And you pointed out with the school buses. Who pays for those school buses? Well, some of the money comes from the feds. Who floats a lot of these colleges on some of their expenses? The feds. So they feel they have the right to throw their weight around on this issue, but they don't. And I believe there are lawsuits in Texas. I can't keep up with everything, but I believe there are lawsuits specifically against colleges right now in the works to protect the students on this matter. But the colleges have been disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. I went to college, and there's an alumni magazine, and I submitted letter after letter after letter about this. None of them got printed. And finally, I wrote them and I said, I know that I am not the only graduate of this university that has something to say about it. And you are now engaged in censorship. I hope you turn out to be right about what you think you're doing. They actually printed that letter. That was interesting. But yes, the colleges. Somebody asked, "What do we do about it?" What do we do about it? Is what we're doing. Gathering in groups. Lawn signs. Yeah, lawn signs are huge. Flyers are huge. Getting people, building the group larger and larger and larger is huge. Getting it. That's how we stopped the cement plant. That's how we stopped the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We researched. We packaged information into bite-sized pieces, and we disseminated it to our group. And then our group, every group member represents somebody who's more active than the average person. And so they may influence 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, you don't know. But that's how you do it. There's no magic here. And David knows this because he's a business person. There's no magic in business either. It's just relentless execution. You come up with the best plan you can have, and then you execute. The battle to beat the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was basically maybe 4 people. It started with 4 total. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers spends so much money that on the federal budget, if it's a big enough pie, you can actually see their slice. That's how much money they had. They spent $28 million just on PR just to discredit us, right? Cement plant, same thing. It's a very small group. Election fraud, there was just 3 of us. when we started, and that stopped too. That crooked family never got that $250 million, or half a billion if you include the interest we would have paid. So what do? You start where you're at. You make a plan. You execute on that plan every day. And the big part of the plan is to make your group as big as possible. As many people on the email list, as many people coming to the meetings, as many people buying signs. I think people should chip in for your signs.
And so just really quick, Ken, actually we have over 1,000 people on our email list.
Yay!
So exciting. And at our largest meeting, which was the one with Dr. Jensen last month, we had about 200 people in attendance.
Oh, fantastic.
So that
fantastic.
was really exciting. But you brought the propaganda and the advertising budget a little bit a second ago. Our own government here spent $8 million last fall on an advertising campaign, aka propaganda, on COVID stuff, basically. Wear your mask. So there's all these signs all around our metropolitan area with all wear your mask type signs.
Yep.
It came on the news that they spent $8 million.
Only $8 million?
Only $8 million.
You guys should be grateful to your government for being so economical. I think they spent $100 million in New York State, honestly.
I can imagine that, yeah. And then our governor also spent $9 million on an empty warehouse that he was going to allegedly put all the dead bodies in that never saw a single dead body, not a single corpse at all. And that's also been in the news. The building is failing, actually.
Well, in New York City, this might be interesting, just background, file away. They had the Navy ship was in New York Harbor. At Jacobs Javits Center, which is a huge convention hall, they had a field hospital for, I think, 4,000? I don't know. It was a couple of thousand at least. They weren't used. And this is quite kind of just, New York, how did this thing roll out? This might be kind of interesting if people want to understand how this happened. So it started in China, obviously. And I said on February 1st, this is nonsense, because they had people with a respiratory illness. They would videotape victims just falling over in the street. They would videotape people going into convulsions. They would videotape people having hysterical fits. That's not a respiratory illness. What are they talking about? That was Hollywood. That's all you needed to know, right? And then the other thing is, I don't know what you know about Wuhan. Oh my God, you've never been in a place as nasty and as polluted and as hellacious as Wuhan. People wore masks every day just to get to work because of the air quality. They had a huge unfiltered garbage incinerator, and that city smelled like burning garbage and rubber all day long and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when I heard that there was a respiratory illness in Wuhan and it was making people go hysterical and fall on the ground and go into convulsions, I'm like, no. Also, this is SARS-2, supposedly, and SARS-1 was also a total fraud. You had some people die in China. And by the way, it's so interesting. You guys are on the Canadian border. You should appreciate this. Canada seems to always figure in this lunacy. Canada is way worse than us, than any part of the United States. And they figured they were crazy on the subject of SARS-1. I don't know if people remember. I remember because I was going back and forth to Toronto a lot. Back in SARS-1, Toronto was shut down. You couldn't, you could fly in, but maybe you didn't want to go there. And it was modest compared to what they did this time, but they caused themselves several. Now, China, where the thing was an outbreak, I think 100 people died. And then maybe 1,000 people died in all of Ontario. And here's the point I want to make. A lot of those people were killed by the medical practices. When somebody's put on a vent, what do you know about vents? How many people know that in order to put somebody on a vent, you have to put them on 5 to 15 different intravenous drugs 24/7? Did you know that? Did you know that you have to give them paralytics? What's a paralytic? A paralytic keeps you from moving. And I'm not talking about you take one pill. I'm talking about it's in your arm, dripping for months if you're on the vent for months. That's the paralytic. They then have to give you analgesics. Ever heard of fentanyl? They're giving people fentanyl. Okay? and then of course they not, the thing that makes you sleep. Okay, now, what are people eating when they're on a vent? Nothing. They're getting a drip with, some vitamins in it or something. What are they drinking? Nothing. The fluid from the vent is supposed to be enough to keep them hydrated. I hate to be gruesome, but this is why these people died, especially in New York City in such great numbers, because that was the next. First we had the China, Act 1. People, I've got COVID. That was literally what they were selling us, right? Then we had Italy. Now, I have a video somewhere on my site. I have over 150 videos on COVID on my site. And one of them is Tony Fauci bragging about all the Northern Italian doctors who studied with him in the United States. So after they put on the show in China, where was the next show? Boy, Northern Italy. What a coincidence. Then the next show was New York City. And New York City is HIV equals AIDS, capital of the universe. Okay? So that whole infrastructure is, however strong it is in Minnesota, it is 1,000,000 times stronger in New York. And New York City people are neurotic as hell as it is. It doesn't take much to scare them. It doesn't take much to convince them they're going to die if somebody sneezes on them. So you had all these kind of already high-strung people who are already pre-programmed to join the march to save the blah, blah, blah. And then where did all these deaths take place in New York City? In the city-run hospitals, in the poorest neighborhoods. Didn't happen to rich people. I mean, maybe some rich people ended up on a vent somewhere, but it was a factory. I have a long interview with a nurse, and she said the vents, someone would die, they'd clean them off, they'd put another one on. They'd die. Why? They were getting money. Every case was money, big money. And I hate to, I know this isn't pleasant stuff, but it's, just so you know what you're up against. What kind of money do you think is made on every vent patient just by the pharmaceutical industry? 15 different drips, 24/7. And then they say, he died of COVID. Maybe he was 80 years old, you put him on a vent, and a lot of bad things happen when you try to vent somebody. You can make mistakes. You can put it down, pipe it down the wrong way. A lot of stuff can go wrong. Now, who's going to take responsibility? The doctors? They had an out. In fact, our governor gave immunity for about a 2-month period to anything that happened in any medical facility in New York State, including the old age homes. So nobody was responsible for anything. And as the nurse told me, there were no experienced doctors in the ICU. It was all residents who had never, maybe they vented one guy in their whole lives. Maybe they'd watched somebody vent. Now they're responsible. The other thing she told me, you need a respiratory technician to manage these patients. It's not just, putting the pipe down them and attach them to the drips. Someone's got to monitor them pretty closely. That's called a respiratory therapist. It's a serious training. It's not trivial. There were no respiratory therapists in these city hospitals. She would say there'd be one for a floor. There was no way these guys could have done their job. It was physically impossible. So that's how this thing got rolling. First, the Chinese hysteria. And of course, the Chinese were motivated to lock their country down because they've got endless political problems. Wuhan, actually, people were starting to be angry about that incinerator. And this was a great way to shut those people up and shut them down. So then it went to Northern Italy, and then it went to New York, and then boom, the whole country became terrified. That's how this happened. That's how this was stage managed. So anyway, so don't be discouraged though. You have to know your enemy, and that's the nature of your enemy. The nature of our job is very simple. It's to be informed. It's to find the people that are curious, give them some information. Maybe don't lay all this heavy stuff that I've laid down on you, but tell them about the fact that the vaccines aren't approved. They're just not. We don't have to get into conspiracy theories. Just the common sense of this. And by the way, yeah, there's so many things, but we can prevail if we all keep doing stuff.
And can I just say real quick, Ken, that you mentioned New York City, the residents there. So a good friend of mine was totally bought in, to the narrative here. And the thing that really sold him was his friend who lives in downtown New York someplace. From his window of his apartment could see the semi-truck that they had brought in for all the bodies.
Right.
And that was enough to convince him.
Yeah.
And that was enough because that was his friend's point of view. So that's not even my friend's. That's just a second.
I get that was drama. That was a prop. And here's something else that you need to know. There's a logistics to death. Okay, if I die in a hospital, somebody's got to come and get the body. That's going to be a funeral home. They shut all the funeral homes down. A lot of the people that were dying in these hospitals were dirt poor, and they just lost their job. So even if the funeral homes were open, funeral homes ain't doing funerals for free. Okay, so what was happening was people were dying. There was a lot of them were indigent, and they went after the people that had no families or were poor, because it was. If you look at where the deaths, it's all in the South Bronx. It's all in the bad sections of Queens. It's all focused on these city hospitals. So if people die and nobody can remove the bodies, they will start to stack up. It doesn't mean that there's an epidemic and it's the end of humanity and it's the end times. It just means the normal logistical train that removes dead bodies from the hospital and brings them to the funeral home broke down. That's what happened. The other lie they use, they're so brilliant, these guys, these liars. I mean, they're really good at what they do. How many people heard that, the sound of sirens echoing through the canyons of Gotham City? Did you hear that when that was going on? Well, I grew up in New York City. It's sirens all the time. It's cops, it's ambulances, it's fire engines all day and night. You don't know when you hear a siren whether it's a fire engine or a cop or an ambulance. And if it's an ambulance, how do you know who's in the ambulance? So but what they do is they take reality and they frame it. Oh, we'll put one of these big, trucks. Some of those trucks weren't even refrigerator cooled. They were just trucks. They just backed them up and parked them by the hospital. But they weren't refrigerated. Those weren't for bodies. That was for show. And then they take the fact that there are sirens in New York and say, oh, the sirens, they're endless. Well, yeah, I grew up in my grandmother's house in the Bronx. I would hear sirens all night long, every day of the week. So that was a bit of fraud. Oh, and then the other thing, somebody sneezes or they have a sore throat. Oh, it must be COVID. You just take the reality and you frame it. That's what they did. And they had the advantage of controlling the news media and they pushed the fear button. Boom. They just kept pushing it. They just kept pushing it. They just kept pushing it. So what do you do? Good lawn signs, calls to action, build that email list, send them good information, bite size, not like me ranting and raving about all this stuff, but a focus, one little bit that people can grasp, send them that. Next day, send them the next thing, and be relentless. Like, take a theme and just don't drop it. Like kids. I would never drop that theme. This is about the kids. Do we want this kind of a world for our kids? Why should our kids be in the park having to wear face masks to play Little League? I saw that too. In the middle of this, I took a road trip to Ohio, and I'm in the rural area of Ohio, salt of the earth area, and I went to the Little League ballpark, and they had a rule sign about COVID. It must have been 500 words long. And then I thought, well, how did that happen? And then I know, because I'm a marketer, one of my clients long ago sold insurance to Little Leagues all over the country. And I'm sure the insurance companies that insure all the Little Leagues sent them the template for that thing they had to post to avoid liability. But think of the psychology of that, right? You come to the ballpark and it's like, oh my God, I'm putting my life in my hands. So, but anyway, our job is not to be discouraged. Our job is to every day do something to build the group, to educate the group, to put up. I love what they call them, bandit signs. What do they call them that in Minnesota? Yeah, because you're not paying for, you're not, it's like free. I mean, I love free advertising. And I mean, really, and I'm a sophisticated advertising person, and David can confirm that, but I love the simple lawn sign at an intersection where 10,000 cars go by a day. To me, that's gold.
And also what we've done too, we have different rallies where we go above different freeway systems in Minneapolis, St. Paul here that are very busy during rush hour. And there's the pedestrian bridges that go over the freeways, and we have our big signs and banners and American flags, and we do different rallies trying to get people to notice our group, our message, our website. And the majority of the time, we get lots of honks, lots of thumbs up.
Oh, you will?
Yeah, a couple of middle fingers here and
there. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. But you know what? The old thing in sales, some will, some won't. Someone's waiting. I mean, some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. The 4 SWs, right? So if somebody doesn't get it, next, go to somebody that does. Feed that person. They're probably desperate. I guarantee you. In fact, that's your job, really, as a group. There are a lot of desperate people that know there's something very wrong, and they don't have our advantage of knowing all these things. And they may never be able to know everything, because not everybody's as crazy as we are to look into every detail, but we could give them 3 or 4 key things that they can hang their hat on, that they can spread. That's the other thing, right? You not only want a message that's clear and simple and evocative, you want it so that people can absorb it and they can remember it, but also so they can repeat it. So when you do a lawn sign, make sure it's something that people can grasp instantly and say, honk, like they see it and they get it and they honk their horn. In fact, that might be the test. Is somebody going to honk their horn with enthusiasm when they see this sign, or are they going to go, ooh, what's that about? You don't want that reaction. You want yeah, take the masks off the kids now. Boom. Yes, I'm for it, And then that's something that they can spread. So that's very important. Viral. That's what the other side's doing. They think out their messages. Oh, babies get COVID. I don't know if you remember that, but back in May of 2020, I made a whole film about that nonsense. And that didn't work, but they tried to sell that one. But they think these things out. They float them, and then they run with the ones that work.
Well, it really seems, Ken, that they're selling with emotion, which is what you've been talking about this for decades now. I've been following you for decades, and how important it is to sell with emotion. Now, they're not really selling us a car or selling us insurance. They're selling us on this whole narrative, and they're doing it with emotion. And I find that the people that are most, if you want to call it programmed, brainwashed, whatever you want to call it, are the people that are really bought into it with emotion. They're bought into it emotionally.
They're selling a fear scenario. That's what this is all about. And their answer is the masks, close your business, don't let your kids go to school, and then of course what they really wanted was the mandatory rolling vaccines. They're already on the booster shot. I mean, I predicted that last year. I think everybody knew that was coming. So yeah, they're selling fear. And a lot of people are so ignorant about health. They just don't know the first thing about health. And that's unfortunate. If their view of respiratory diseases and viral transmission was true, there would be no human beings left. We would have died out a long time ago. Nature doesn't work this way. Yeah, some people are going to get sick. If somebody's vulnerable, they may get really sick. They may even die. And this is something else. I mean, I don't know if we can use this, but amongst us, we're all going to die. The question is, how are we going to live? And I'm not going to live, on my knees, afraid of shadows. Especially when the science and logic tells me I don't have to. Yeah, something's going to get us someday. We know. We just know that. And vaccines aren't going to. There's this myth that, see, the medical profession. Here's a joke. I don't know if there are any doctors, but the good doctors will appreciate this. What do you call the doctor that graduated at the bottom? What do you call the student that graduated at the bottom of his medical school class? What do you call him? Doctor. Okay. It's not like every one of these guys is the brightest bulb on the tree. And then there are a lot of professions that don't work that way. You better graduate at the top of your school. You're going to be unemployable. Like the worst structural engineer, the one whose bridges fall down because he can't get it together. That's unemployable. But and so to protect their cartel, we have good doctors. I guarantee we have good doctors. But as it is a profession that protects mediocrity, that protects conformity. You know, we have to be aware of that. And if everybody, yeah.
You were the first person that told me that the number 3 cause of death in the United States is medical mistakes. I believe that's one of the videos I saw last year from your channel. And that was mind-blowing when I realized that. I mean, if you think about it, medical mistakes kill way more than even the alleged COVID deaths.
And and think about this. Those are the ones that are reported and that are verified as coming from a medical cause. How many get swept under the rug? How many never get reported? So it's quite large. I mean, I wish I had all these facts at my fingertips, but there's one. It's more dangerous. Anyway, going into a hospital as a patient is a very dangerous thing, even if it's a simple procedure. That's just a statistical fact. And then, when they're not forcing vaccines on us, they're telling us how dangerous and/or ineffectual natural remedies are. How many people have died, from drinking chamomile tea? 0. How many people have died from an adverse reaction to a tranquilizer? Hundreds of thousands over the decades. And then, of course, we had the opioid thing where they were deliberately seeking out poor communities where people were hopeless and did blue-collar work like coal mining and steel milling and stuff, and had a lot of, you do that kind of work, you're hurting by the time you're 40, you're hurting bad. And so I don't know if people are aware of this, those companies targeted demographically those regions. They targeted West Virginia deliberately because they knew there would be a lot of poor people without access to good medicine who had a lot of physical problems, and they knew they would get a lot. So, and we had doctors that were perfectly happy to engage in that. So we have to take our doctors with a grain of salt. There are great ones, but I always say if you have a serious illness, you best become the expert on that illness, because your doctor may not be, and may not be motivated to become. He gets paid whether you live or die. I know this is not maybe real pleasant or anything, but then, here's the thing I want to say. There is no doctor that is going to change the fact of your ultimate mortality. In other words, we're all going at some point, one way or another. In the back of our mind, we think this doctor with the white coat, if we just treat him nice, somehow he's going to hold this off forever. No, he's not. This is a human being that knows what he knows, can do what he can do, is not God. We should question them. We should ask what they're doing. I can't tell you the number of employees' lives I've had to save from the employees. I had a girl worked for me. She comes to work bleary-eyed. What's the matter? I felt like I had a golf ball stuck in my throat. I said, what the hell? That's weird. I said, did you start I always ask the same question. Anything change in your home? No. Any new medication? Oh, yeah, I started a new drug. Okay. Let's go to the internet. Now, the doctor won't tell you. They won't give you the label with all the warning stuff, but you can find the warning stuff on the internet if you really look. These things are multiple pages. One of the symptoms of an adverse reaction, the throat closes up. She went and told her doctor, oh, what a surprise. I didn't know that. Really? She would have kept that girl on that thing till she killed her. I have another employee in the Philippines, had COVID, had to go to the hospital. They had remdesivir in his room. I said, you do not let them give you that. You do not let them vent you. They were all ready to give him remdesivir. What is one of the adverse, do you know what remdesivir is, everybody? That's what Fauci,
heard of it, but yeah, tell us.
That's what Fauci was pushing as the miracle cure to COVID back in April. Do you know what one of the adverse reactions to remdesivir is? Difficulty breathing. So they were going to give a remedy to somebody. Okay, so thank God they didn't vent him and they didn't remdesivir him. But one day he sent me a picture. His hands were the size of baseball mitts. I said, he goes, what do you think's happening? I said, they put you on steroids. He goes, no, they didn't. I said, I guarantee they put you on steroids. So 6 hours later, when the doctor finally appears, yeah, they put him on steroids. Didn't tell him. I'm not a doctor. I know this stuff. We all should do our best to learn little things like this. So I kind of could go on and on. But remember, we're not trying to convert the world. We're trying to build our group bigger. We're trying to build a critical mass. When we build a critical mass, people that are on the sidelines and fearful will be more confident. And then you start getting the snowball effect. If 500 people come out, well, that's a lot, or start with 50. Well, that's 50 people. That's not 2 people. If 100 people come out, oh, wow, that's a lot. And then it builds. Build the email list. And David's point, this is really important, folks. You cannot trust Facebook. You cannot trust Twitter. You cannot trust Telegram or whatever the new one is, Telegraph. They're all a joke. You've got to have email addresses. It's the only way. Yeah. So, David, you're on the right track, and your group's on the right track. Just do more of it and do it more consistently.
Well, yeah, thank you. And that's exactly what we're doing at this point here, and we're trying to keep our momentum up. So right now, we normally have in-person meetings. The last couple have been virtual, what I figure is better than nothing, right, to keep our momentum going.
Very good. It's very good.
Every Monday night, we call it Mask Off Monday. But real quick, I'm trying to make all these notes here as I'm listening here. You mentioned remdesivir and how it causes the closed, they can't breathe is one of the side effects.
Yeah.
So, I can't breathe. Well, it's funny. I was watching, AIDS, Fauci's First Fraud, and it talked a lot about AZT and how the AZT, the drug, was actually causing a lot of the effects that they were, attributing to the AIDS.
Yep.
And it's just interesting that, it seems like, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times you hear about these, currently the COVID vaccine side effects, and a lot of them sound similar, strikingly similar to the actual COVID symptoms themselves. So it's just interesting the parallels I see between, AZT back then and remdesivir now and things like that. And even back then, and I don't want to give away, if you haven't seen it, you folks have to see this movie. The AIDS Fauci's First Fraud one, people were demanding the AZT.
Yes, just as they're demanding it. This is they're demanding the vaccine. This is marketing, and David, you know how this works. What does Apple do? Right? You can't just walk into an Apple store the day the new Apple phone is ready. You've got to camp out overnight, right? And and everybody else sees the demand and goes, oh my God, this must be the greatest thing ever. So it's all engineered. Just think about it. A Sunday school picnic doesn't happen by itself, right? Somebody's got to say, we're going to do it this Sunday. We're going to be at this park. We're going to do it at noon. We're going to bring fried chicken. I mean, somebody's got to plan it out. So everything that you see going on in that tube, guys with whiteboards and slideshows and everything have worked the whole thing out. And then they same thing that we're going to do. We come out with our best message, then we have a message delivery vehicle, and then we press that button over and over and over and over again.
Well, one thing as a marketer, Ken, I was really surprised by was they're using the technique of takeaway selling.
Yeah.
And especially with the vax, at the very beginning of the vax rollout, remember, only certain people could get it, and you had to, get on all these different Facebook groups. You had to get a vaccine hunter to help you find the vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't get it. It's not your turn yet, and so there's all this fake scarcity. And in marketing, we call that takeaway selling. And it also reminds me too, even last year when the mask thing came out. No, don't put mask on. Don't do the mask yet. I remember at the very beginning, even people I know were like, I can't believe they're telling us not to mask up. That's ridiculous. We should wear a mask right now. We should be wearing them. This is dangerous. And so it's like the psychology effect. It's almost like, I call it takeaway selling, but also the reverse psychology effect, right?
Yep.
Where you almost want something more that you can't have.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
You don't want it, but.
And then the fake story, rich people are jumping ahead of line and getting the COVID vaccine soon. And that's the other thing they're pushing. Over Auschwitz, they had a sign that said, Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free, right? Sinister. Well, what's the catchword now? Equity and fairness, or whatever it is. So if you watch their dialogue now, it's like, well, to be fair, we have to make sure that the disadvantaged can get this vaccine. Now, the disadvantaged aren't dumb. A lot of them are really aware of how they're being screwed and how they've been screwed. So they're not dumb. They know they know sometimes way better than people in the mainstream society know. But they're trying to create that, oh, we've got to help. We've got to bring the vaccine to low-income neighborhoods, to poor children. We've got to help. Have they cared about feeding poor children? Have they cared about making sure poor children get a real education? Have they ever cared about anything? No, but they care about these vaccines, which is the big tip-off. Same thing with Gates in Africa. Do they care about making sure Africans have tractors? They don't have tractors in Africa. But that wouldn't be super expensive to do. That would multiply the food production overnight. Is Gates helping tractors come to Africa? He sure isn't. Is he bringing clean water to Africa? He sure isn't. But he's going to bring vaccines to Africa. And that's one of the things they've been doing. They've been using Africa up until now as their experimental, they would go and test vaccines and test new drugs and test this. And, poor people would go to a clinic, and they'd hire, the doctor would be, running the test, no disclosure, and they were unknowingly guinea pigs of stuff. So what was overseas, they're now doing to us.
Well, we're demanding it, though. I mean, at least, I think they were just kind of innocent. They just happened to go to the clinic that day, and okay, yeah, the doctor recommends that I should get this, whatever. But here, because of the propaganda that we're all subjected to, and it's not even just propaganda from the media; it's propaganda from one another too. I've noticed this.
Well, but that is triggered. That's designed. People have been weaponized, and that was conscious. They talk about weaponizing viruses, right? Which is they call it gain of function, right? But what it really is weaponizing. It's like, let's take something and make it really bad. Well, you can also weaponize a population. And that's what they did. They made fearful people, and then they gave them themes to spout, and now those people are running around. The average person unfortunately doesn't really think a lot and doesn't really research a lot. And so if you push their fear button and give them 3 or 4 things to say, you've got them. You just created a robot. I don't mean to diminish their humanity, but in terms of functionality, how they're functioning in the world, they're not much different from a robot. And that was engineered. It wasn't just, we're going to come up with some slogans and put them on a billboard. It was like, we need slogans that are going to travel, and they're going to be viral, and that are going to make people fearful, and that, all planned out, all worked out in detail.
And Ken, don't you think that they knew, that most people are just too intellectually lazy or don't have enough attention span to look into this? I mean, when I try to explain people, explain to people psychothresholds of PCR tests, the average person doesn't have the attention span to even understand what any of that means.
Yeah, that's why we have to pick our themes very carefully, and they count on people not looking into things. But so much of our, country, not our country, every country really, the leaders depend on people not looking into things in detail, But yeah, clearly they can count on that. Because fear trumps all. If you're terrified, not a whole lot else is going to get through to you until that fear is resolved. And again, our job is really not to de-fear people, because it's really a huge undertaking. Our job is to find the people that are already saying, I don't know about this. I know it's wrong. I don't know why, but it doesn't seem right. And then feeding those people, building your group, making it bigger, creating that critical mass so that people on the sidelines feel like they can join in and say no too.
No, I think you nailed it right there, Ken, because a lot of people that for the first time coming to one of our meetings, they tell us that they feel relieved to find a group of us that, are like-minded, not, crazy, bought into the whole fear narrative. And so one of our sayings a lot of times in our in-person meetings is that, you're not alone. We're not alone. That's what, and a lot of people are just so thankful that they discovered or stumbled upon our group and are able to, network with other like-minded folks. In fact, we have a Telegram group, a MeWe group, Facebook group, all this stuff. And does anyone happen to know, a face-friendly dentist, or anyone know that's good, an unvaxxed massage therapist? Because some people are concerned about the vax shedding. Some people don't want to have to wear a mask at the dentist or whatever it is, because even though there's no mask mandate here, still a lot of those types of businesses are still requiring it. So within our community, we're able to ask each other for recommendations, which is really nice. But people are
Okay,
all
hey,
the time
that recommends an idea. You should have a directory of vendors who are, friendly to our point of view, and that's something that you can use to attract and retain and educate and motivate members.
And it could even be a lead magnet for an opt-in page. But that's a marketing thing. We'll
that's okay.
Talk offline about that.
But we've got to we've got to market, and we've got to market brilliantly. And brilliant doesn't mean complicated. It means, coming up with the essence and then just hitting it and hitting it and hitting it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've realized, just to give you a quick background here, we started our first in-person meeting back in January. It was my co-founder, Dr. Matt, and I, and 5 ladies. So it was 7 of us all together. And then the next meeting was, maybe like 15 people, something like that. And now consistently every meeting in person that we have is at usually at least 40 to 50 people. And we've had, the one with Dr. Jensen was 200 people. We've had ones that are definitely over 100 in person. And then also most of the meetings we have an online component as well. So because we're in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, we also have members all across the state. And we have a pretty large state. So we have folks that it's a 4-hour drive away, but so they are not feasible for them to attend in person, but we have them join us online. So we're able to build a community that way. And I actually would love to have different chapters in the different parts of Minnesota, of our group. So, and you also mentioned something in the very beginning. You mentioned, I can't remember the exact word you used, something about it, kind of people are bought into it, almost like a religion. I can't remember word you used.
Hey, you know what? I realized that I forgot to record this.
I'm actually recording it.
Yay! Okay, because
yes.
There's some good stuff here. Okay, everybody likes to pretend that we're in the modern age. I mean, some people, not everybody, but a lot of people like to pretend that we're in the modern age and we're beyond religion. There are a lot of people that, especially the people that are pushing this fraud. By the way, that's one of the things you'll find consistently on the quote other side. They don't have any spiritual connection to anything. Their spiritual connect. But the thing is, human beings can't live without one. We have to have something that we know is bigger than us. Just it's sanity provoking. Because if we think we're the beginning, middle, and end, that's going to be a bad outcome, right? So everybody has a religion, whether they know it or not. A lot of people have accepted the guy in the white lab coat as a religion. Pre-COVID, pre-vaccination, pre-any of this stuff. Oh, the doctor, So I believe we're all wired that way. And they elevated this fear to the level of religious conviction. And let's face it, everybody has their own religion, and I have no comment about anybody's religion. But if you look at the details, the stories are like kind of wild, it's like the Buddhists say this and the Hindus say this and the Jews say this and they're really wildly divergent stories. And they may not all hold up to strictly rational analysis, but people accept them with a strong conviction. So we are designed to accept things without them being 100% logical. We're designed that way. If you think about it, we're roaming around in the savannah and we're trying to keep from being eaten by tigers, and we're trying to find the next water hole. We better cooperate. We better bond together and have a unified set of beliefs, or we're not going to make it. So I think biologically we're wired that way. So if somebody knows how to push that button on somebody, that's a very powerful, potent force. Now, the good thing is we can push the button too. For instance, you pointed out that people feel relieved when they realize there's others. Okay, that's an example. I mean, and let's face it, a big part of church or temple or synagogue or whatever is people being together every Sunday or every Saturday. I mean, that's just a huge part of it. It almost doesn't matter what again, I'm not stepping on anybody's religion here, but it almost doesn't matter what the exact details are. We're together every Sunday, and we may not be perfect, but we care about each other and we look out for each other. That's what we're wired to do. So essentially, guys, that's what you're building too on your side, and you should be conscious of that. It's not a trivial thing that, I feel my heart breaks for somebody that's alone right now in this and doesn't have anybody to talk to and doesn't have a group that's validating the reality of this. So you guys are doing God's work. I mean, there's no two ways around it. It's very important work. It's very, very important work. I mean, look at me. I like, this is all it's not all I'm doing. I basically doubled my work day. I do this half the day and then I keep my businesses going the other half of the day. Why? Because it's really important. It's our last stand in a way. I hate to say it, guys.
And Ken, even a lot of us, myself included, even a lot of our spouses aren't exactly, into the same mindset, which can be very challenging.
This is so
friends
hard.
and family, a lot of friends. My best friend is the gentleman I was referring to earlier, who his friend saw the semi outside his house or his apartment in New York City, and we rarely talk now, even though we're best friends. And it's basically because he's really bought in the narrative. He thinks that my viewpoint is reckless and dangerous.
And then by the way, that was engineered. It wasn't just we're going to have a debate. It's you're dangerous. You're a source of contagion. You're a potential source of contagion. By the way, taking this historically, what was the advertising theme of the Nazis? Okay, they literally made films that portrayed Jewish people as source of contagion, and that they had to be removed from Germany to save Germany. You can find these films, and this is not a conspiracy theory or something that they thought it out. Because here's the thing. We talk about what people are hardwired for. People are hardwired to fear contagion. And we should. I don't want to, if you see a dead carcass with flies around it, don't eat it. Or if you see a guy covered in spots and throwing up and, stay away from that guy. You know what I mean? So we're wired for that. But what they did was they took it and it's like, here was their greatest diabolical thing, the asymptomatic spreader. And they did that with HIV equals AIDS. Well, you don't know who has it. Anybody could have it. You could kiss somebody and then now you're going to have AIDS, And the same thing with this, they had interwoven narratives. Our narrative is I don't know if you could test this one. If their version of science is true, humanity never would have made it this far. Our great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents if they would have died, at age 3 and, there wouldn't be human beings left. We're sturdy people. That's why we're alive. Our ancestors were sturdy. We're sturdy. Nature. I've got this postcard that I mailed to, I don't know if you're still on my list. I mailed this to my customers March 2020. Nature is resilient, and so are you.
I like that.
Yeah, we're going to die. We're going to get sick someday. I mean, all kinds of terrible things are going to happen. It's just, it's just the way it is. But in the meantime, we're tough. We are the, depending on whether you believe in evolution or don't believe in everything. But if you believe that narrative, mammals have been around for hundreds of millions of years. This whole virus and dealing with it stuff, we've worked this out. And that's one of the things they're doing, which is so sinister too, is, natural immunity doesn't exist anymore. Right? Oh, you had, by the way, if COVID is even real, I don't even know, but I did have a couple of days where I was out. And I wasn't having trouble breathing, but I wasn't running any marathons either. And I had a nonstop fever. All right, I got over it because I'm essentially healthy. So I may have immunity to this thing. I don't know. You can't get a test to find out if you've got the antibodies. They'll test to see if you've got the virus, but they won't test to see if you've got the antibodies, and they won't credit the natural immunity. It's got to be a pharmaceutical product. And, to talk about marketing, what is the ideal product? Okay. The ideal product is something that requires no marketing. Okay. So, there's no marketing. There is some marketing on the front end, but essentially you've got to go and get this thing. What else is
recurring?
And it's recurring. And what was Bill Gates' big scam, right? That crappy operating system of his, and that they're upgrading it all the time, and you've got to upgrade and you've got to change all your software. This is just the same thing except applied to all of human beings. And the only way they can sell that is if they persuade people. And it'd be great if you could find a guest who's more knowledgeable than me. If they could persuade people to disavow the realities of biology. I always tell people we had medicine before 2020 that goes all the way back to the beginning of recording history. Then we had medicine after 2020. The two do not resemble each other. And I wish I was a doctor. I wish I was an MD, because then I could tell that story in detail and be credible. Maybe you could talk to Dr. Jensen about that. That would be a very powerful thing. Just to make a list, pre-2020, masks were worn in surgical operating rooms to prevent doctors and nurses from spitting into open wounds. That's the only reason we have surgical masks. There's no other reason. Masks were changed several times a day. Now we got people wearing masks for 3 months. Masks had a specific protocol for putting them on, taking them off carefully, and disposing of them. You're hanging off your ear while you're eating lunch, That's absurd. That's not medicine. That was never.
Children. Think of little children and how they touch their masks with their dirty hands constantly.
That's the real crime here. What's being done to children, because they're being taught that they have no immunity, that they have no resilience, that they have to depend on Fauci and Klaus and in Germany and the other fellow, Bill Gates, someone has to stick something in their arm for them to survive.
Yeah, I mean, they're recommending here, Ken, it's a recommendation. It's not a requirement. But they're recommending here, MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, or maybe it's MDH, Minnesota Department of Health, that all students who are not vaccinated get tested twice per week, with a faulty, PCR test or whatever. So, and to me, that just keeps the illusion of the pandemic going forever.
And that's the design.
And one of our members, Ken, is actually a pharmacist. I won't say his or her name because she or he wants to stay private. But he or she did tell me that they reached out to and it's a very large hospital system here. They reached out to their internal lab that processes these the test results for COVID. And he or she asked if he or she could get the PCR cycle threshold information for the test that they use. And they responded back. They said, your question is a very simple, straightforward question. However, the answer is not straightforward. We actually don't know the cycle thresholds. It's all controlled by the software, and the software is controlled by the software updates. And so this lab literally had no idea if the cycle threshold's up at 45, way over amplified, or down to like 24, which would be a reasonable cycle threshold.
Yep.
Because Health Canada did and other, I think CDC as well, did a study where they weren't able to culture a virus on anything higher than a 24 cycle threshold. So so there's that. And you also mentioned fear too. I'm one of the guys when I mentioned fear. I heard someone say this: fear is the currency of control. So once people really bought into fear, you can control them like that, make them do anything they want. I actually asked my health club manager here. Long story, but the part I'll share with you is I asked him, okay, so if Minnesota Department of Health required you as the health club, the gym, to require all members and employees to be anal swabbed, tested, to enter the gymnasium, the gym to go work out, would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
He said yes.
Yeah, this is what we're up against. So part of it is boycotts. Conscious. We're not, that may be part of something your group can do especially as it gets bigger. Contact certain businesses and saying, just so you know, we're not coming to your business because. Yeah,
that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And we actually kind of have started that a little bit, kind of like, if you want to call it the blacklist, so to speak. And you brought up the directory idea earlier. And the only consideration we had with that is if the directory got on and this is back when we had the mask mandate, when we mostly talked about this, had this discussion, but we were worried that if this directory of all the good businesses got in the wrong hands, some jerk could go on their Google page or whatever and say, oh, this place is horrible. They don't, require their customers to be masked or whatever. So you're always hesitant about that. But now the mask mandate's been lifted here at least meantime, or meanwhile in Minnesota. So maybe we'll revisit that idea. So I think that's a great idea. Now I haven't been checking the chat box. I mean, I've been seeing lots of stuff fly by.
But let me say something though. Your concern is real. You know, it's real, and so maybe that's not a good idea because those people will be targeted. I mean, that's the other part of this. You stick your head up too successfully, and you will be targeted.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen on social media, not in our group, but I've seen just on random Facebook groups. I'm a member of a local community here, and I saw someone. He actually took a picture. He was in a Chinese restaurant in the waiting room, waiting for his to-go food, and he took a picture of a gentleman unmasked, and he went on to shame not only that gentleman who was unmasked, but shaming the Chinese restaurant, and is telling everyone to don't go here, boycott this place. They don't require masks, and they're not enforcing the mask because. Of course, that business should be, it's their job to enforce that, because they need to be the cop of the mask police, basically. And I was really happy to see that there was more than half the comments back were like, hey, I'm going to go there. That sounds like a great I think I'm going to go support them.
There you go.
It is a tough battle, though. It does seem a very challenging battle and you rewind to the very beginning of the talk, everyone, when Ken said, I think one of the first things you said, Ken, was we're not here to try to convince everyone. We're here to try to people that are on the fence, so to speak. I think we can still get them.
Yeah.
The people like my friend who's completely bought into it. He's already been double jabbed. He's probably going to get his third jab here pretty soon, I'm sure. I love him, but I unfortunately, I think I just have to
Here's one. I was really the chief advisor to this movement to stop this cement plant. And, I have nothing against industry, but you're not supposed to have cement plants in the middle of a dense population. They're very dirty. They're like oil refineries. They're pretty bad. And and ideally you would cap them, so the emissions don't go everywhere, because coal puts out a lot of mercury, puts out a lot of arsenic, puts out lead, right? So this is going to be right in the middle of a little city, and so it was going to be bad. So I didn't want that because I live around here, and I laid out and you understand that when somebody gets my marketing services, they're getting some serious high octane stuff, right? So I laid out their whole thing that they followed for 7 years and they won. That guy calls me a reckless person because of the position I'm taking on this. C'est la vie. C'est la vie. The president of that organization, c'est la vie. You can't help it.
Wow.
So you find the people that you can talk to, Yeah.
It's challenging, though. It can be very challenging for a lot of us, and especially when it's our own friends and family, and
So were there questions in the chat thing, or
I'm looking through right now.
I'm just going to put my sign back on the wall here.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, so folks, if you have any questions, go ahead and if you've already asked them like a while ago, pop them in the question box now, because how the chat box works is there's a lot of comments in there, and it will take a long time to scroll through all of them. So if you have something that you want to mention right now, please go ahead and just pop it in there. Elena has a question about Fauci's emails. Okay, Elena, do you want to unmute yourself and come on, or do you want to just type it into the chat box? Either way would be great.
I can unmute myself.
Okay,
much
great.
easier.
Welcome, Elena.
I just had a question. I had put it in the chat box earlier. Ken, have you heard anything? Is there anything going on behind these leaked Fauci emails as far as any repercussions with him?
Well, see, there will be no repercussions for him about anything, and there never is. I mean, we could find out that he's carrying out I'm exaggerating, but we could find out that he's carrying out child sacrifice, and it would be fine. We've jumped the rails, or the nation has jumped the rails and is in the irrational zone, and he is the Führer, and anything he says is fine to those people. I mean, just think how crazy it was to have some guy marching around, in Nazi Germany making all these proclamations. People went for it. Didn't matter what he said. How crazy. He could foam at the mouth and people were buying it. They loved it. So there will be no, I hate to say it, there will be no repercussions for him because he is the front man for the operation. He'll be protected till the end. Fox will make a little bit of noise, prodding him, but they're not going to really. Anyone that think, I don't know, I just got to say this. Does everybody know Fox is owned by Rupert Murdoch? Right? Does everybody know that Rupert Murdoch and GlaxoSmithKline are in bed together? That they actually put Murdoch's idiot son on their board, who has even people in the pharmaceutical industry are like, what is this moron doing on the board of GlaxoSmithKline? Well, the day that he did that, all of a sudden there were positive articles appearing all throughout the Murdoch media empire about vaccination. So anyway, this goes everywhere, and anyway, yeah, he's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to come out with a book soon about Fauci. It's going to be mind-boggling, and the only people that are going to buy it are us, and other and intelligent people, and most people are going to follow the attacks. The attacks on Kennedy will be savage when that book comes out, and if the book gets any traction, even all the more savage. I'll tell you something really funny. So there's this magazine called Vanity Fair, and there's this woman, a hatchet job type of person. And so she wrote an article on Bill Gates. What's on Bill Gates' desk? And it was just like, it was almost like, oh, he's got this, and that shows he's a genius, and he's got that, and that shows he's, every item on his desk just showed what a wonderful, marvelous genius he was. Then a few months later, she wrote a book about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to me, a great hero, who's really, he did not need this battle. He's had enough, in his life, but he took it on. And so her article about him was, his ex-wife was really unhappy with him, and he had a drug arrest when he was in his 20s. And, it's like the guy's in his mid-60s. You're going to talk about something he did that harmed no one but himself when he was in his 20s? Give him a break, But the same journalist who deifies Bill Gates, who's a zero of a human being, attacks in the next issue, so yeah, so Fauci, I'm afraid, that is just going to keep rolling. He's just going to keep rolling on.
Well, let's not forget all the money that the media organizations are getting from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So of course
right.
they're not gonna diss on their Fauci's got a bobblehead, for crying out loud. And actually, I just saw today, someone was talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'll remind everyone that he's the nephew of JFK.
Yeah, nephew of JFK and the son of Robert Kennedy.
Yeah. And so I saw him described today by a journalist that called him, the famous anti-vaxxer. That's
of course,
all he's known for. That's all he's known for. He's just a famous anti-vaxxer.
And then I've had people that are believers and I'm a believer of none of these parties, so they're all lunacy to me. But one who's a believer in the Democratic Party goes, I don't understand why he's doing what he's doing. Well, maybe because he has integrity. Maybe because he saw his uncle murdered and his father murdered, and he thinks life's too serious to be a bought and paid stooge. Maybe could that be the reason? Because he was an environmental lawyer, first, and then all these moms would come to him and say, look, it's not just mercury in the water. It's not the fact that we can't eat fish in any river, lake, or stream. It's also that our children are having terrible problems. He did not need to take that battle on. I've worked in that arena, and it's the opposition on that side. They are brutal. They are brutal people. So anyway, Robert F. Kennedy will continue to be disgraced by these terrible hatchet job people, and Fauci will continue to be deified. Okay, next. Now we got to go find the next person that we can help. That's all we think about. Who's the next person we can help?
Ken, have you heard about, and I just read this today, so I'm not sure if you have any knowledge of this, but there's a federal lawsuit that was recently filed for the actual vaccine deaths of over 45,000. There's like a whistleblower from the CDC. I haven't actually looked into it that much myself. I read a little bit about it today. Have you happened to hear anything about it?
I don't know, but I'll tell you this. The guy that's in charge of the vaccine, here's the problem with keeping the numbers. The guy that's in charge of the vaccine rollout in Ontario is also the chief coroner for our. So they're fixing the game at every level. because they've had decades to wire this thing. Like, you're not going to become the chief coroner of Ontario if you question HIV equals AIDS. That is career suicide. So by definition, everybody in any official position in any branch of government related to public health has already bought into an insanely dishonest scientific argument that has injured and killed hundreds of thousands of people. So that's where that's where the game starts. Like, but I don't, it doesn't matter where the game starts. It matters where the game ends, right?
Totally. Robert Kennedy Jr., Jess says, Robert Kennedy Jr. still does the environmental lawyer stuff along with the medical freedom. He is amazing. If you don't get their emails, I suggest getting on his email list. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
That is very good. What is their end game, Ken? Lee wants to know.
Oh, boy.
Big question.
Well, I mean, on a simple level, we already hit on it, which is mandatory vaccines for everybody all the time. Like, they have an itch one day, and we've all got to get a vaccine for it. That's the end game. That's one of the end games. What their ultimate, I mean, because if you destroy human beings, who's going to run the economy? I just don't know. Like on a certain level, this is like just total madness. I mean, well, it's not like total madness. It is total madness. Why would you undermine? Life's hard enough. Why would you go out of your way to undermine the health of people? I guess they think they can modulate it to keep us just sick enough to be controllable, so that we'll just do anything they want. There are a lot of people that are cold-blooded, and they look at us as, means to an end. Not human beings, not people that merit anything or deserve anything. Just means to an end. So it's just.
You don't really think that Bill Gates cares about people?
He's got a heart of gold. He's got a secret heart of gold.
Yeah, it must be a real secret. All right, folks. So I think we have time just for one or two more questions here. So if there's any other questions, and I do apologize, I'm scrolling through the chat box. There's a ton. We had a lot of great comments. People saying how much they enjoyed our talk this evening. A lot of other comments on particular topics we were talking about at that particular time. So if there's any other questions, go ahead and type them into the chat box right now so we can see them at the very bottom. That'd be great.
But I would focus on the concrete and the immediate and the practical and the simple, which is what the other side does. They don't try to explain the PCR test to us. They just say it's a test, and the test proves you've got COVID, just like the test used to prove you had AIDS. Whereas if you watch the film, the test never tested for AIDS. It tested for HIV, and it never even tested for HIV. It tested for genetic debris that suggested the one-time presence, possibly, of HIV. I mean, so we're talking about, whoa, but they would tell these poor people, and this is the fear button, they would tell these poor people, you've got HIV, you're going to die. And you're going to die a horrible death. And it wasn't true.
And then they took the AZT, and
then they're taking I saw a couple of cases of perfectly healthy people get the test, be told they had HIV, which was a lie, be told it was leeching. If someone said almost hypnosis, it is hypnosis. What's hypnosis? You become very suggestible. You can talk somebody to death. I mean, there's primitive societies all over where if the voodoo guy points a bone at you, and declares a curse, you might go home and die of fright. We're suggestible. There was a guy, by the way, this is interesting, and maybe, David, you could remind me, and I'll find this reference and send it to you, who was going around New York City and dehypnotizing people. He was a hypnotist. But he used his skill to dehypnotize entire groups of people from their fear of AIDS.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. I'm trying to find somebody must have one of his presentations, but I do have on that subject, but I do have video of him speaking. And it is exactly hypnosis, and it is deprogramming. It is absolutely deprogramming. Now, we're not in the position to deprogram people. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. Again, our job is to find like-minded people who feel alone, who feel isolated, and bring them in and give them a home. That's really our job right now. The deprogramming of people will have to come later because it's heavy lifting, and you need an infrastructure to do it. And we're not anywhere near having that infrastructure yet. But that will be part of it. If we get to the end of this thing, it will be assisting these people that have been terrorized.
Well, speaking of that, actually, I had a quote here I was going to show online.
Let me just say something to Maria.
Yeah.
Guys, we are not competing with TV. We are looking for the people that think TV is a load of crap, don't believe it, just looking for somebody else to talk with. This is a really important concept. We're not just, it's David Sales. If I'm selling combs, right, I do not knock on the door of a man who's completely bald. That would be insane, right? And in the old days, every man in Russia used to have a beard. It was required by law, believe it or not. The Tsar, look it up. It's crazy. If you weren't a proper Russian religious person as a male unless you had a beard. How many razor blades could you sell in Russia in those days? You'd be an idiot to try. So don't try. Don't worry about what TV's doing. Yes, people are dumb. Maybe some people are dumb. The transhumanism. There's all these things. There's all these things. What's the end game? All these things are valid. But what we're looking for is people who already know there's something not right, who just need some support so that this group can get big enough to create the critical mass so that it starts snowballing. That's our goal. It's nothing else for now.
Amen.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but I saw that little thing appear on the screen. I wanted to say it.
That was absolutely perfect. And back to, and what you're saying actually makes so much more sense too, but there's a quote here from Carl Sagan. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you've given a charlatan power over you, you'll almost never get it back. And that's how I feel it is, Ken, with a lot of my friends. Like, I don't even know if, even if Fauci came out and said, next week, actually, everyone, it was all fake. I faked the whole entire thing, in his Fauci voice. Yeah. I still think my friends would still, no, they can't. No, because of that quote right there. They've been bamboozled this long. There's no way that they can ever, come to grips with themselves. But I wasn't fooled, and that's the problem I think we're up against is people that they don't want to admit to themselves that they've been misled. Even if they look at the data themselves. I mean, here's the data from the CDC. Look at it yourself. It says right there, 99.1% of all people that died had coexisting conditions or pre-existing conditions. And, but they don't even want to see that. It's like if it doesn't come from CNN or Fox or MSNBC, they don't want to look into it themselves, and they're too intellectually lazy. They just assume that the journalists are actually doing real journalism, which we all know is not the case anymore. Yep. And it's been very challenging.
It is. This is one of the greatest challenges ever, frankly. I mean, lots at stake, and the forces aligned on the other side are huge.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I want to just see if there's anything else here. Oh, totally agree, David. Thank you, Jess. As Mark Twain says, it's easier to lie to people than to convince them they have been lied to. Another great quote. That's very similar to this one here. Yep. Maria was talking about, I was talking about dehypnotizing people when you do, and that's what you were talking about, Ken. Okay.
I saw that clip come up, and that's a very pertinent word, hypnosis and dehypnotizing. And
a lot of people think that hypnosis is not real. I actually have a friend of mine who's a hypnotist for a living. That's what he does for a living. And believe me, it is real. A lot of people think it's fake. A lot of people, he does like shows where people hypnotize them and they sing like Madonna and stuff like that. A lot of people think it's fake. They're faking it. No, they're not. They're
the way stage, this is actually relevant. The way stage hypnosis works is there's a huge audience, right? And this hypnotist is on the stage and he starts talking, And one of the things that hypnotists have is incredible acuity. Like they know how to look and read people. Like they're very, very, very good at that. So when he's talking, he's looking and he's seeing who is suggestible by how they're physically reacting. Then he brings a small group of those people onto stage, right? And then he works a little bit more and he finds out who's super suggestible, because there's always a few people that are wildly suggestible. So he's basically started like a funnel. You'd appreciate this, marketer. He started with this huge group and then he's funneled it down, and he's found that statistically there's going to be, in a group of 200, there's going to be 1 or 2 people that are just so suggestible you could tell them anything. Cluck like a chicken, bark like a dog, and that's how that works. You know, talking about how we're wired, we're not wired to have to rationally think through every moment of the day. That would be exhausting. We're wired to figure out a program and follow it. Like, you know, you wake up in the morning. You don't wake up at, 7 o'clock at night. You wake up in the morning. You have, if you have breakfast, you have your breakfast. You don't decide, I'm going to, and you have the usual breakfast. You don't decide, well, today I'm going to innovate. I'm going to think through all the breakfast options that ever existed. I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to research them. I'm going to try. No, so we program ourselves. It's not a bad thing to just get through the day. So we are unfortunately programmable. And so that's what marketers are doing. They are programming people. We're also, this is a thing I didn't mention, which is really important. We are herd animals. We're, people. We're herd beings. And again, it goes back to the savannah. You're not living out by yourself in the savannah. You're going to be, tiger's going to get you. You're not going to find the water hole in time, and you're certainly not going to be able to catch an elephant by yourself. So we grew up being with a group and agreeing with the group. And it's not a bad thing. There's a lot of positive things about that, unless somebody perversely takes control of the dialogue and weaponizes that cooperative nature. I mean, that's one of the other really sinister things about this. One of the things, they weaponized fear, but they weaponized a lot of people's natural inclination to be cooperative and helpful.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, and all those people stitching the face masks and doing all that good stuff. I looked at that and I'm like, well, I can't fault those people. Based on what they know, based on what they've been told, they think this is going to help, so they're doing it. Yeah.
Based on what they assume. I call this a lot of pandemic of assumptions. Everyone assumes that the PCR test is accurate. Everyone assumes that the COVID cases mean that these are infectious people.
Yeah, sick people, right?
Yeah.
I love it. The case count's rising. What does that mean? Oh, they took a bad test that's totally unreliable and it showed they have some genetic marker that means they might have encountered this virus at one time? That's a case? That should never have been allowed. That should have been shut down on day one, but it wasn't.
Well, it's really frustrating when they call them infections. That sounds scarier.
And Fauci, I loved it. Active infections.
Oh, God. It's painful. Guys, we're going to wrap it up here for tonight. Ken, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time. And this is, mind-blowing here. This is way more than I anticipated, so thank you. This has been amazing. I did put a link, everyone, to Ken's breathcheck.com/video is the place to check out all the amazing videos that we've been talking about, especially the HIV AIDS equals Fauci's first fraud.
Fauci's first fraud, HIV equals AIDS. Yeah, that will make. See. And I, here's a weird thing. Let me just. I don't know. I don't want to go. You guys want to go, but that film is not getting. It's not spreading.
It should.
I know. Now, what film did spread like crazy? Was the pandemic film. Yeah. And there's problems with that film, and there's problems with the stars of that film, which we could get into maybe some other day. But that was another engineered thing, because right when people were looking for answers, suddenly that film appeared, and that film got all the promotion anybody could ever want. And by the way, that's of course when all of a sudden we had riots in the streets at the same time too, right? They timed all that just perfectly. Because initially people were like, if you go back to March and April, people were like, wait a minute, I'm not going for this. And that's when the riots came out, and that's when pandemic came out, and all of a sudden people went down a rabbit hole that, leads nowhere. All engineered. But anyway, I will talk for her.
No,
Thank you for reaching out and being patient with me, and thanks for everybody willing to be on Zoom tonight instead of that other thing.
This has been hugely insightful, though, Ken. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for making these documentaries available to everyone. As a community service, basically. Now, I will mention that you do take donations. So on the link that I gave everyone there.
You know what? No, give to your group. Period. Yeah, I got plenty of money. I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that though very much. No, give to this
plug
group.
out there. Put a plug out
there.
No,
I appreciate the plug. What I would like more though is for people to watch the film and talk about the film. There's so many things people could be doing. I guess I'm proud of the film because you saw it, right?
I watched it last week and I was mind blown. I actually was surprised I didn't already watch it because it came out last year, right?
I was releasing segments of that film in March of 2020, but I didn't finish it and have it nailed down until August. It's going to be a year old in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Because I know there were a few clips I've already seen prior, and it must have been on your Twitter maybe where you released a couple of the smaller clips.
Yeah.
But the entire film I had not seen, and I'm telling everyone, 100%, it is a must-see film. It will completely explain what we're living through right now. There's so many correlations. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's uncanny. But,
it's the same playbook, different disease, and different target.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many things that I'm like, wow, exactly like, and it's like another thing and another thing and another thing. Like seriously, there's a whole list you can make of similarities between these crises here. So, but Ken, thank you so much. Oh, the name of the film, Charisma, is one more time. Ken, let you say the name of the film.
It's Fauci's first fraud, HIV equals AIDS, but it's. By the way, I've been banned from Twitter. My account was frozen in March, and they won't even listen to an appeal. So you can, however, if you want to have some fun, you can. They didn't kill my account; it's still there. I guess they were careless. Go to Ken McCarthy is my Twitter channel and read all the way back to February 2020. None of this was a surprise, at least to me. But so that's a way. If it's kind of interesting, historical. But yeah, I forgot. I'm not even allowed to be on Twitter.
So dangerous, so reckless, Ken.
I am. I'm a contagion.
You look like a very dangerous guy. If I saw you in an alley someplace, I would be very concerned for my health and my well-being.
People ask, how can you follow me? If you go to brasscheck.com/videos, is that what I had there?
Well, I just put a link because Chris was asking for the link for the specific film, so I did put it right in there, folks. The last link in there is the AIDS Fauci's First Fraud video link. And then there is, Henry just posted a Twitter link, twitter.com/Ken McCarthy. But Ken, I thought you have one for Brass Check too, isn't there?
I do have one. I was a lot more active on, I have my assistant post to Brass Check, and I have to remind him, I have to tell him post this, and no, but the Twitter channel was a lot harder. So, but if you go to any of the Brass Check pages, there's always an opt-in box, and so you can just opt in, and you'll be on my list, and you'll get an email every day till the end of time.
I recommend it. I've been watching all the videos, and they're not all COVID related, in all fairness, but very interesting though. Nonetheless, very interesting.
COVID's not the only fraud the government's playing on us, by the way. They have a few other tricks up their sleeve, believe it or not. You might be shocked, but.
Linda says, Ken, if you're blocked from Twitter, you're doing things correctly.
Thank you. I consider it a badge. Consider it a badge of honor that not only did they block me, they won't even, I can't even appeal. My appeal's gone to a block. I love it.
I hear more and more of these stories. Just today I saw different activist campaign Twitter people saying that their PayPals were permanently disabled. Actually, Peggy Hall, I think some people mentioned her in the chat box. She just announced today that her PayPal was permanently disabled, and they seized her funds in there. And she was taking donations for different things like that too. Yeah, so if you're on Peggy Hall's email list, check out the email she just sent out today. Yeah, they seized her PayPal account. And then the Last American Vagabond, who's also a jump I follow, lots of great information there. They also seized his PayPal today as well. and are not giving out the funds. So it's crazy what's happening here, folks. This is why, Ken mentioned earlier, if you're just following us online, like on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, please, so important that you get on our email list as well, just because at any time we can be deplatformed, as they say. And I know the other ones are better, like Telegram and MeWe, but still, even those could get deplatformed. If it's a serious enough agenda, they will find a way to deplatform.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely make sure to get on our email list, and a quick plug to get on the Brass Check email list as well, because I got it actually just about a week ago, and I've been enjoying the videos as I receive them there. So that's how it actually reminded me. I think in one of your emails, Ken, you reminded everyone about the AIDS and HIV, first fraud, and that's when I actually watched over the weekend. I had a little extra time to kill over the weekend, and I was just blown away, absolutely mind blown. So, but we could go all night long.
Okay.
So thank you again, Ken. I really appreciate the opportunity to have you on here tonight. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you for sharing all the insights with us. I mean, honestly, guys, if you go and check out the videos on his website, you'll see all the hard-hitting research he's been doing here, and it's been awesome. So thank you again to Ken, and thank everyone for joining us here tonight. We will have the replay up. I'll work on here in the next about 24 hours or so, and hopefully get that out on the email next day or so. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you next week at the picnic.
All right. Have fun. Have fun.
Right.
It's got to be fun too.
It will be fun. It will be fun. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.